of the cult leaders were presented at the Shanzu Law Courts in Mombasa and will be detained for 5 days. Detectives claim that they are part of Mackenzie's inner circle, carrying out burial of the dead as well as forcing victims to fast till death. The court heard that they were armed with dangerous weapons as investigations focuses on preferring terror-related charges against them. Kevin Mutai, NTV in the county of Kilifi.
All right, I'm just trying to pull up on my phone a statement that was released by the judiciary yesterday with regard to the status of the cases that Paul Mackenzie is facing with regard to radicalization, prohibiting children from going to school and hospital. So let's take a look at that statement on my screen here and get an update on that status, because it will inform in part our conversation this morning. All right, and here we go. There are several cases which were filed against him beginning in 2017, and the charges then included offering basic education in an unregistered institution. He was discharged after a plea bargaining agreement with the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, and also in 2017. Now this was before he was charged again in 2019 for radicalization, where children were found in his charge. If we could look at that now, and we see here that part of the other charges that were preferred against him in 2017 were radicalization, offering basic education, as I mentioned, in an unregistered institution, failing to take his child to compulsory education, and failing to provide right to education for a child. We also see the status of that case. Mackenzie and co-accused acquitted on the 29th of October 2021. All right, let's take a look at those charges that were preferred against him in 2019. To disobedience of the law, being in possession and distributing films which had not been examined by the Kenya Film Classification Board, and operating a filming studio and producing films without a license. And the defense hearing is coming up on the 26th of the 6th month, 2023. And I see here miscellaneous applications that have been filed. 5 criminal miscellaneous applications seeking to have Mackenzie detained. Applications filed between the 23rd and the 17th of April following the unearthing of murders linked to the preacher. Now, these are recent events, and this follows the order for exhumation of the bodies of 2 children, which thereafter led to an application for the exhumation of 14 bodies. And we find ourselves where we are now, and that is where we have over 110 bodies within 110 bodies that have been unearthed at least. And so we'll get into that conversation. I was remiss at the very start in not mentioning all my panelists. I will pull up that poster for you on the touch screen behind me shortly. But allow me to also introduce, coming to us from Mombasa, and that is Dr. Luchetu Likaka. He's a sociologist and a criminologist. Unfortunately, he wasn't in studio, so you know what they say, out of sight, out of mind. But you can see him on your screen. He will be joining the conversation. We'll also have Hussein Khalid, who is the Executive Director, Haki Africa, coming to us from Kilifi. In studio, I have Brigadier General retired Ahmed Mohammed, and he is a Defense and Security Advisor, Horn Institute, and Seku Owino, who is the NMG Legal and Training Lead. All right, opposition leader Raila Odinga is expected to jet back into the country today. Various leaders from the opposition have stated their commitment to make their way to JKIA to meet Raila, who is expected to drive to Kibra in the company of his supporters, where he will address a public consultative meeting. With more details is Brian Mushiri.
Opposition leader Raila Odinga has been out of the country for a couple of days on a trip whose mission remains unknown. Raila's return home from the Azimio coalition announced the resumption of mass protests following the standoff over bipartisan talks with the Kenya Kwanza coalition. It is believed that Raila Odinga's return may spark simmering tension between police officers and his supporters in the streets of Nairobi. Parallels can be drawn between this return and his return in November 2017. a return that led to 6 hours of running battles between police and his supporters along Mombasa and Jogoo roads. Scores were injured. It was after his return from the United Kingdom that Raila saw himself in as the people's president in January of 2018. Leaders in Raila's corner are ecstatic and elated about the return.
First of all, the plan is very simple, and this plan has been motivated by the people's love for Baba himself. They are the ones who requested that Baba shares his itinerary so that they can be able to welcome him at the airport. So we'll be communicating his itinerary, what time is expected to land at the airport. The leaders there to receive him, Wananchi there to receive him. We will move in a peaceful procession from the airport all the way to Kibra. A route will also be provided before tomorrow, so that the security forces, the public all know that there's going to be a procession from the airport through certain areas and all the way to Kamukunji grounds in Kibra. So we don't expect any trouble tomorrow. As we have said in the past, these are constitutional rights. We don't expect any police interference in the peaceful procession.
So tomorrow, Baba will be jetting back, and Baba is coming with the Kiwa. Baba is coming with the Kiwa to reduce the cost of living, the Kiwa to ensure that there is free secondary education, the Kiwa to ensure that there is free university education, the Kiwa to ensure that the government will comply to what they said about offering free health to Kenyan citizens. The key one to ensure that the price of fuel is reduced. And I want to tell you that as at now, the government is at a dysfunctional equilibrium.
Jubilee Party Vice Chairman David Morathe, in an interview with NTV, said he will go to meet the opposition leader.
The reason I'll be on the Maandamano and I'll be in the airport to receive Raila Amolo Odinga is because these people were looking for an excuse. You see Morathe, you see Uhuru. They have always been trying to link these Maandamanos to the former president. So some of us have deliberately tried not to be out there, although we are firmly in Azimio.
Brian Mushiri, NTV, Nairobi.
All right, let us take a look at the dailies, and that report by Brian Mushiri on the return of Raila Odinga informs the headline story on the Daily Nation. Raila returns to Ruto checkmate. President's camp hastily seals coalition deal to bring opposition party into its fold. Opposition leader Raila Odinga flies back to the country today for a grand rally to address the political crisis that deepened after bipartisan talks stalled, even as President William Ruto swiftly executed a counter-strategy to corner him. The image on the front page of the Daily Nation is the other big story we're following. Pastor Ezekiel arrested as police probe cult deaths. Detectives arrested televangelist Ezekiel Odero, the leader of New Life Prayer Center, at his lavish 65-acre Mavueni home in Kilifi County, as he was allegedly preparing to travel to Tanzania. Pastor Ezekiel's 45,000 capacity church was also closed down, and over 100 people holed up at the church evacuated. I see also on the front page of the Daily Nation, households, tea farmers reap big in 3.5 trillion shilling budget. And we have more details on that let me see the pages that have been indicated here. And that is, no, not indicated on the front page, but I will scroll through and find that for you. Also highlighted on the front page, county governments are also expected to receive their highest ever annual allocations at 429.7 billion shillings. The government will release 385.4 billion shillings from the national cake, with an additional 43.7 billion shillings flowing in from conditional grants and other revenue. Also on the front page, I see court blocks Treasury's 900 million shilling tax demand in NCBA row. And Justice, Solai Dam disaster suspects. Let me scroll down so that you can see that. Solai Dam disaster suspects have a case to answer, says court. Families affected by the 2018 Solai Dam tragedy have won the first round of a vicious court battle in which 9 suspects, including the dam's owner, are in the dock on charges of causing the deaths of 48 people. So that is the front page of the Daily Nation. That report that is highlighted on the tax NCBA row is on the back page. Court blocks Treasury's 900 shilling million tax demand in NCBA row. Treasury had walked back on its 2019 decision that approved exemption. There is a report that was filed by Julian's Amboko last night. You can find it on NTV Kenya's YouTube channel. I see also on the back page, medical interns threaten to down tools in pay row. And the medical, pharmaceutical and the dental interns have given the Ministry of Health a 2-week deadline starting Monday to wire money owed to them. They have threatened to go on strike if the payment is not made within the given time frame. All right, let's take a look now at the front page of the Standard. And here we go. They also have an image of Pastor Ezekiel on the front page. This is their headline story. Another cleric probed over mass deaths. Flamboyant televangelist Ezekiel Odero arrested in new, quote, mass killings probe. Our state expands scope of investigations in Shakahola death toll. The death toll rose by 12 to 110, with children bearing the brunt of the madness. And a quote here of the Deputy President's wife, that is Pastor Dorcas. If Paul Mackenzie is a criminal, he should be treated as an individual. Even his family should not be part of his crime. Paul Mackenzie is not the church. In fact, he has said he is not a pastor, but he is Mr., she says, as he said, Mr. Paul. All right, righting a wrong, man freed after 11 years in jail. That is also on the front page of the Standard. At the very top, state goes after Uhuru's NCBA bank tax waiver. Economy projected to grow by 6.1%, and Kenya's 1 trillion shilling debt headache. There is a conversation we had yesterday on the cash crunch. You can find it again on NTV Kenya's YouTube channel. Okay, let's take a look now at the Star. Front page of the Star. Kenyatta Family Bank hit as KRA demands $1 billion. Treasury revokes tax waiver extended to NIC and CBA banks in 2019 merger. And again, an image on the front page of the Star of Pastor Ezekiel arrested for suspected deaths. There he is, Bible in hand. Also on the front page, Ruto raids Azimio, a state accused of killing parties. President Ruto has continued to raid the opposition even as he comes under attack for allegedly killing rival parties and stifling multi-party democracy. His Kenya Kwanza coalition signed a deal with the Kenya Union Party, an opposition outfit. We see also on the front page, Shakahola tragedy, why Malindi family evicted Mackenzie from their property. Paul Mackenzie, who is at the center of the horrific deaths of at least 100 of his followers, was evicted from land where he set up his first church in Malindi. He was given a parcel of land at Kisumundogo in Malindi to set up a church, but fell out with the family after accusing them of witchcraft. Also on the front page, budget, state cuts borrowing, plan to raise 3.6 trillion shillings. Okay, so that is the front page of the Star. Let's now take a look at the front page of the Business Daily. And this is their headline story. Regulator allowed to install mobile phone spying gadget. And I see here this report is by Sam Kiplagat. Apex Court dismisses appeal seeking to stop CA bid, that is the Communication Authority, device to access records, location and mobile cash deals. The communication regulator has received the nod of the Supreme Court to install a device on mobile phone networks to detect counterfeits. Amid concerns it will give the watchdog access to other customer data, including calls, messages and financial transactions. The Apex Court has dismissed a second appeal seeking to stop the Communication Authority of Kenya from rolling out the device management system, which telcos reckon will offer the state a window to snoop on subscribers. I do not want to read any further because you should purchase your copy of the Business Daily should you want to learn more. All right, inside Ruto's first 3.6 trillion shilling budget taxation plans. This one is by Constant Munda. And on the ticker this morning, Students to get help loans via M-Pesa. Beneficiaries of the Higher Education Loans Board will now be able to receive their loans via M-Pesa after the agency partnered with Safaricom to launch a new mobile wallet hosted in its mobile money app. And if I scroll further down, Diageo's EABL share purchase gives brokers a shot in the arm. The recently concluded 22.7 billion shilling purchase of additional EABL shares by British multinational Diageo helps generate millions in trade commissions for stockbrokers representing investors who sold their shares in the tender offer. And I see Jaindi Kisero, why did the government allow Telkom Kenya to end up in the hands of a private equity company? And I've saved the best for last, and that is Taifa Leo. Let's take a look at their front page. And this is what it reads. Raila arudi na joto la maandamano. Kinara wa Azimio Raila Odinga leo anatarajiwa kutoa mwelekeo mpya kuhusu mkondo wa maandamano pindi baada ya kuwasili nchini kutoka Dubai. An image of Raila Odinga there. Maandalizi ya kumpokea kiongozi huyo yakamilika. Wandai asema Odinga atafanya tangazo muhimu leo. We heard from Brian Mushiri. Again, you can find his report on NTV Kenya's YouTube channel that he will be heading to Kibra on landing. Murathe sasa kushiriki maandamano. Mwenyekiti wa Jubilee atangaza atamlaki Odinga uwanjani JKIA leo. That was in an interview, exclusive interview with our very own Zainab Ismail, who's heading to Tharaka Nithi today for NTV on the road, and she sat down with Murathe on Wednesday. They also highlight on their front page, Pastor, in quotes, Ezekiel kushtakiwa kwa mauaji ya halaiki. Afueni kwa wenye magari jijini. Gavana apendekeza wenye magari wasitozwe chochote mwisho wa juma. And wahamiaji 15 wafariki baharini. Watu hao waliokuwa wakielekea Ulaya walikufa baada ya boti yao kuzama. Okay, so I will press pause on our newspaper review, but of course some of these stories inform our discussion today. And move us on to the topic of a conversation, and that is the Shakahola Crimes against humanity. And like Pastor was put in quotes on the front page of Taifa Leo, I put the crimes against humanity in quotes because we've been told by the state, we've had the DPP and as well as the Interior Cabinet Secretary use terms such as terrorism, radicalization, but I will leave the radicalization really is not an issue for me right now, but the terrorism and the genocide terminologies that have been applied to the events that transpired in Shakahola. First, Sekou, I'll give you an opportunity to respond, react to 110 bodies unearthed, and before I invite you to put your legal mind to the question of terrorism and genocide. Good morning.
Good morning.
And for those who are wondering, yesterday I had your brother on, Kwame Owino. So when I showed the poster, Jeff Mote of K24 texted me and he was like, I thought Kwame was an economist. This is his brother Sekou, so do not get confused. It's like looking in the mirror, I suppose, for the two of them. But what's your take on the events in Shakahola?
Okay, thank you, Olive. I mean, it's shocking that I'm sure, as most people are, that you can have now going 100, probably will be more people who've, and as I understand, they're mostly children who've apparently met their deaths somewhere in the country.
A good number of children, yes.
And we've all just woken up to it. It's like you just ask yourself, what did we miss that could probably have saved many more of those children? And that's a shock for us, and we need to perhaps begin to ask ourselves, where did we fail as a country? Wasn't there somebody who could have informed somebody else that something wrong was happening? That's one. Two is it worries you that if 100 people can die in almost one given place, what else is happening in the rest of the country? You just have to cross your fingers and hope that mischief of this kind is not going on elsewhere in the country, and therefore that there has to be vigilance on the part of the citizens and everybody else to make sure that we don't have this kind of thing happening again.
All right.
Yeah.
Speaking of vigilance, will you allow me, retired Brigadier General Ahmed Mohammed, to just refer to you as Brigadier? I think I'm so used to it. Speaking of vigilance, right? when we look at terrorism, which we will get to more substantively, we hear of operations in the Boni forest. And I was listening to the governor of Kilifi County, and he was saying this place is a forest, it's a thicket. The last time I was there, I flew over and were looking for charcoal burners. So he was, in a way, trying to explain why perhaps they missed it. But what doesn't make sense to me is somehow where Boni Forest is concerned, they're able to root out the terrorists. But where this incident is concerned, they somehow missed it. How did this go undetected, in your opinion? But before you answer that, have you ever, in all your years in the area of defense and security, witnessed something similar to this? I know you worked with the UN at a point.
Well, thank you, Olive. First, a very sad incident, and indeed condolences to the families and relatives of those who were affected by this crime that we have seen around. And you asked about the relation between Boni and this incident. The Boni one is unique in the sense that it's a well-announced operation out to remove bad elements within the Boni, and well done, coordinated, and a multi-agency approach. But this one is different. This one is a silent one, confined within somebody's compound, kept quiet and restricted. And the fact that the element of religion coming in was able to distract others from exposing what was going on. But indeed something of concern. And the question is really how much of this is going on elsewhere in this country, and where have we been as this was happening, Olive?
Where have we been when this was happening? I did mention that we also have with us, and this is a gentleman who's coming to us virtually from Mombasa County, and that is Dr. Luchetu Likaka, sociologist and criminologist. Daktari, I remember you shared an article you penned on the subject of cults, but what was your reaction, your response when the true extent of the events at Shakahola came out? Because, you know, initially this started with 2 children, most recently, who the investigators had sought to have their bodies exhumed. Before we knew it, it was 14. Now we are at 110, a good number of whom are children. Your reaction?
Morning. One of the things that came to my mind is one, it is shocking. It's not something you'll be happy about when you learn the loss of children, the loss of lives. That is something that is quite disturbing. But on the flip side of it, we need to appreciate that this is actually the mirror of our society. This is the mirror of what is happening across board, based on the fact that there's a lot of indoctrination, there's a lot of misuse of religion for specific purposes in terms of prosperity and in terms of actually taking advantage of the whole situation. So we need to appreciate that, yes, it has come to the fore, and therefore a pointer to the rotten society, a pointer to the fact that we may need to start thinking about deconstructionism. We may need to start thinking about how do we then evaluate the role of religion in terms of prosperity and advancement of humanity in Kenya. So it's a big concern, and it's a wake-up call that this should not just be swept under the carpet or just described the way they have described in terms of crimes against humanity or terrorism, which is something we're yet to get into. But the reality is we have a big problem as a Kenyan society, and definitely we need to start thinking critically and evaluating ourselves going forward.
Thinking critically and evaluating ourselves going forward. I'm pulling up a statement here that was released by the judiciary, and here they say 13 hours ago. Allow me to just say yesterday on the status of cases against Paul Mackenzie. And now he says he's a farmer, but between 2009 and 2019, by his own testimony, he was a pastor of the Good News International Ministries. So the judiciary released this statement giving a status report on the cases that were filed against him. We did go through this earlier with graphics, but in 2017, we are told here he was charged with radicalization for promoting extreme beliefs, offering education in unregistered institutions, failing to take his children to compulsory primary and secondary education, and failing to provide the children with education. In 2019, he faced other charges at the Malindi Magistrates Court. A few of his followers were also charged on various occasions with child neglect. The complaints against Pastor Mackenzie and his co-accused, the judiciary tells us, were also discussed by stakeholders in the justice chain, led by presiding judge at the Malindi Law Courts under the auspice of the Kilifi County Court Users Committee in its quarterly meeting. This was in 2019. The CUC discussed the issue of radicalization of children by Pastor Mackenzie through his church and TV station. The issue was escalated to the National Government Implementation Committee, they tell us, and the Communication Authority. And the CUC was advised the matter had been forwarded to the Cabinet for discussion in the coming weeks. And as Dr. Ezekiel Mutua has already spoken about, the TV station's license was revoked by the Communications Authority. He was at the KFCB at the time, and he talks about them going in there and interrogating some of those messages that were being distributed via said TV station. And these are the criminal cases. There's a one for 2017, and the accused, we are told by the judiciary, entered into a plea bargain with the Office of the Directorate of Public Prosecutions, and were discharged by the trial court and ordered to be on. Why is it not so clear there? There appears to be a scissor, but let me just pull it up on my screen here. They were ordered on my phone's screen, ordered to be on best behavior. And I see again in 2017, it continues this press release on Mackenzie, and they go on to 2019, and I'll pull it up. But essentially, at the end of this statement, we are told by the judiciary that there will be an investigation by way of the Judicial Service Commission. Here I have it. The Judicial Service Commission, which is charged with handling disciplinary issues, and the leadership of the judiciary are examining the records to establish whether there was any misconduct on the part of judicial officers and staff who handled the matter. The judiciary affirms its commitment to upholding the Constitution and the rule of law in the administration of justice. What do you make of this statement, Seku? I remember when the DPP, Nuruddin Haji, visited Shakahola, the scene of crime now, and he talked about the last time this gentleman was in the courts, in police custody and before the courts. He was released on a bail of 10,000 shillings. And now we see the judiciary saying, this was an issue which had been raised at the cabinet level after a plea bargaining agreement was entered into at a certain point. In your view, why do you think they found it necessary to release a statement on this?
Yeah, and that's the danger that I see in this thing. Instead of all of us taking a step back as a country, taking a deep breath and saying, how did this happen? We are pretending that we have immediate answers to it, and are beginning to finger point that it wasn't my fault, it was so and so, it wasn't my fault, it was so and so. And so that's where the problem is. With regard to the argument about bail, I don't know why we should argue about bail. The Constitution is clear that bail should be on reasonable terms, and bail is not meant to be punishment. So there's no reason to ask somebody to pay millions so that you keep him locked up. Bail is just an opportunity for him to go home and prepare his defense as the prosecution prepares to prosecute him. So I don't see how the amount at which somebody is released on bail should be an issue if you have your evidence on the constituents of the offense right. So it isn't, and that's why I would say that this really is not the time for us to finger cross and point fingers. Let's just sit back and say, how did this happen? Let's make sure it doesn't happen again.
All right, so you're advising us against the finger pointing, but somebody has to be held accountable. Who dropped the ball? And this was the headline on yesterday's Daily Nation. You slept on the job.
Yes, and that's where I'm saying I want to take a little bit of caution here. As we speak today, what we know only is that there are now more than 100 people who've been found, bodies that have been found dead. We don't even know yet What happened to them? We are presuming they either starved themselves to death. You know, we'd been in a totally different situation if autopsy reports told us there was a cholera outbreak and all those people died of cholera. It would be a totally different thing. And that's why I am urging caution. This thing is not complete. I don't think we are at the end of it. We are probably not even in the middle of it in terms of understanding what the legal spin-off of this will be. Because somebody has to very carefully look at the evidence of what happened. And it's the forensic evidence and expert evidence by the doctors, which will help us determine what happened here. Then we flow backwards.
Okay.
We may even find, it's extremely unlikely, but we may even find that there's no offense. If there was a disease outbreak and all these people died, what will be the problem?
But when testimony,
what will be the issue?
Okay, but in court, there is also something called witness testimony. And there have been people who have survived and shared their ordeal. So we have an idea, do we not, of what transpired at the ranch?
It's one thing to say you have an idea about what people say here. It's another thing of what, and that's where we need to be careful, and that's why I understand the courts. It's one thing to have that kind of person talk to us here and say whatever he wants to say. It's another thing whether that evidence will be credible, on oath, and after cross-examination.
So are you saying we need to pump on the brakes?
Yes, in terms of trying to attribute liability, criminal or otherwise, we need to pump on the brakes. My view should be, let the police continue with their investigations, let the doctors who are conducting the autopsies conduct the whatevers, and then we give all that information to the DPP's office to make of what will be made of it.
All right.
It's too early, in my respectful view, to start talking about criminal liability, because even as we sit, even I am unclear about some of these things. From what I can see, it may even be possible that we may not find liability against these persons. It is possible. And you know, we say it's the first lesson you're taught in criminal law in school when you're studying. Not every homicide is murder. Just because somebody has died does not mean that they've been killed by somebody for whom there will be legal responsibility. And that's what we need to put out our minds here. Say, okay, it's obvious there have been deaths. It seems to be like there are many. What is the pattern and what do they mean for us legally? Then we begin to talk at that point.
Okay, what of those who say somebody must hang? And speaking of that, we'll come back on the other side of this break with Brigadier and what he makes of this headline. That was the headline story on the front page of the Daily Nation yesterday. You slept on the job, MPs tell trio. Who are the trio? Director of Criminal Investigations, Mohammed Amin, Major General Philip Kameru, Director General, National Intelligence Service, and Jafet Kome, Inspector General of Police.
In life, you could be eager to be employed or be self-employed. Either way, you do need the right skills. This is the point where Goodwall is essential to you. Goodwall is a professional social media platform that offers you earning and learning opportunities. It offers you great chances to grow in your career, learn new skills, showcase your existing skills, network with like-minded people, or get job opportunities. Nation Media Group, in partnership with Goodwall, aim at providing solutions to unemployed African youth, creating digital content that inspires young people to stretch themselves and get the right skills that are useful to employers and their peers. So, how can you be part of this? Every month, we'll give you a chance to win $150 through our monthly challenge. Anyone can participate. Just look out for the challenges on NTV Kenya's social media platforms. Join the challenge now.
They have changed the name to Judah. Serious. Reurero to Judah. Like Judah, manzi. Now it's a great idea, lakini how does the name even fit in the present day context? Nani alikuwa anapiga kelele jana usiku? I think ilikuwa nyumba ya nini? I think ni Saimo wa Yuda alikuwa anaguruma.
Ili ujue unaenda kupita, lazima uwe umejipanga.
Ujaitoka kwa exam room, unajua wewe uko na 70, alafu mwalimu akileta physics uko na 14. As in, ulienda na imani.
That moment when you start to get back to ordinary, and ordinary feels amazing. Whatever pain you're going through, release starts here.
Wapi makofi, makofi, makofi wewe! Makofi, makofi!
He's giving everything to get towards this finish line. 2:01:26 or so. That is the second fastest marathon time.
Jina langu naitwa Brand Kipyegon from Londiani, Kericho County. Nimekuja hapa kushangilia Kiptum.
All over her face. What a performance!
The chair was something. We've had the women's elite race to back that up.
This is exactly talking about you. Where it seems like everything of yours has been battle. Now the Lord is bringing you to a place where He makes room for you. So when you get it, when you get your possession, now instead, the tables have turned.
Of flavor, fruity freshness in every sip.
Join me, Brent Leo Smith, and my expert team of guides and cameramen as we explore the wonderful wilderness of Africa. Expert guides and cameramen strive to bring the wildness and magic of Africa into your living room. Come join me for Safari on Pridelands.
Own your dream home for as low as 1.98 million Kenya shillings in Vipingo Kilifi. SMS Vipingo to 22365 or call us today on 0740 400 215. Terms and conditions apply.
All right, welcome back to AM Live. And we just heard from Seku Owino on the question of criminal culpability. But are there not instances where a public lynching is deserved? But we'll come back to that, Seku. And Brigadier, yes, we are going to be joined very shortly. I've already spoken to him, Hussein Khalid, Executive Director, Haki Africa. And do not forget that coming to us from Mombasa, we also have Dr. Luchetu Ulikaka, who's a sociologist and a criminologist. But Brigadier, on this newspaper headline that was there yesterday, front page, Daily Nation, you slept on the job, MPs tell trio. Angry lawmakers point an accusing finger at the country's top security chiefs. Japhet Kome, Amin Mohammed, Philip Kameru, and for failing to stop the massacre of Kenyans in Shakahola village, Kilifi County, as the death toll climbed to 98. To date is 110, and the government imposed a dusk to dawn curfew while declaring the village a disturbed area. I have listened to lawmakers such as Opio Wandai, who said, you know, the Inspector General of Police was busy running after protesters, so he should resign while this was happening. Do you agree with these MPs that these gentlemen have a question to answer?
Well, we can't just pick that from the outset and say they have a question to answer. I'm happy that we are told that there is going to be an inquiry that will establish really what happened and give us the truth in terms of where there was a lapse in terms of that security. But before that, it's much more a reflection of society, and indeed a rotten society, in the sense that we are very fond of being always reactive and not proactive. When things are going on, we do nothing at all. We have no concern. When things go out of hand, you're going to come back and throw in the blame game. It is so late. So late. And this case is very clear. This case is so clear that it's not a surprise for us that it happened. In fact, all those entities exactly know what has been going on. They know what has been going on. Go back all the way to society. At the grassroots, the local leaders know what was going on. They know very well what was going on. The Nyumbakumis know exactly what was going on. The local police station know what was going on. But there are a number of issues that come into play that will detract us from doing something. In fact, even the county security committee knows this. And I'm happy my friend CS Aisha Jumwa in 2018 raised the issue.
She did. She
did, so openly. What happened? She was condemned by whole society. And she had even to almost like go back and withdraw her words. Why? This thing had consumed society, had consumed the people who are there, had consumed the system. And a number of issues come into play in terms of how this happens. As I said, the rot in society. Yesterday, we saw this Prophet Ezekiel taken by the police. What happened? Yes. Riots. While half the country is complaining and sad, another half is quite happy with this and saying, no, this is our Lord, let him go. The people knew exactly what was going on. Families knew what was going on, and they kept quiet. While, yes, it was a cult, and therefore an element of fear within that. But I want to say is a reflection of a failure of our systems, a failure of society, where there's even fear that the public can't report this thing. I'm happy that the whistleblower came up and said it happened. And then he was asked, are you safe? Again, a reflection of society, that we live under fear, that as long as I'm safe, I don't care about the rest. So to me, Olive, well-known fact, system knew about this. So the issues came in. Yeah, they also to include the issue of protection. Yeah, the issue of religion also coming in, that we respect religion, but there are limits. That religion, when it goes beyond a certain point, we must come in. Where there is something like this affecting men, women, and particularly children, somebody must be held accountable. And this must happen. And therefore, across the whole spectrum, there's a problem. And the best thing to do is a proper inquiry to know what happened, what did you slip of the job, who are responsible, and ensure that that does not happen in the future. Now, in some token, somebody asked, this is one maybe isolated case. There are so many others. What are we doing? And then you ask yourself again, the fact that a lot was being done on the Muslim sheikhs and all that, almost something similar to that. You go in deep and find out what is going on. For this one, under the cover of religion, from very senior positions, this went on. Within our view, very sad indeed, Olive.
And it's a good thing we have a sociologist with us this morning, because you say this is a reflection of society. Dr. Likaka, what do you make of the revelations that are only now coming out? Because when this, when this exploded, so to speak, came, to the public consciousness, that is when we saw people now posting on Twitter saying, also look at this person and also look at this person, and this was going on here, and this was going on here. Why do you think it took something of this magnitude to get people to finally speak up, ask questions, interrogate, look at the conduct of our religious leaders more critically?
Thank you. One of the things that comes out is that we are a society that is reactive, and a society that is very forgetful. And we are in a transition where we are really adoring and appreciating the church leaders who are actually misleading us. I'm sorry to put it that way because these are facts. The question will be, what is the role of religion today in prosperity and advancement of Kenyan values as a society? And this is where we see that religious groups have actually been misleading this society because they are preaching the gospel of prosperity. And you look on the flip side of it, the political class have also been part and parcel of this religious kind of movement and the shenanigans that they are doing on the platform. And even looking at it, that some of the political advancements, they get a platform actually in the church. So the question here is that nobody is willing to come out and speak the truth, because if you came out and spoke the truth, they automatically get you condemned because they are part and parcel of the problem we are facing. If you look at the criminal justice system, the blame game now and the releasing of the statements, everybody is trying to move around to exonerate the institution. But the truth is, we have failed as a society. The criminal justice system itself is a mess. Our intelligence have failed us. Our security officers have failed us because some of them also profess the faith or the cultic movements. And you can see some of the ministers of this church movements are actually more protected like the state officers. They are even protected like the president. They have a motorcade. They are adored. But the question will be, what went wrong? It's because our values have actually been degenerating, and as a society, we are not ready to stop and question ourselves. Hey, what is going on? What is happening in Shakahola, for instance? Because even today, everybody's complaining. They want to see somebody taking the responsibility. But the question is, some of these heavy statements, some of these words, for example, terrorism, genocide, they don't meet the threshold in a court of law. The question will be also, you need to look at Pastor Mackenzie's mental state. What is level of awareness? How is he able to influence or control the behavior of these adults who end up taking their own lives? Maybe we will charge him for issues around the killing of children. But what about adults who actually go there voluntarily? Why? Because of our social, our environmental factors, our sociological and physiological, psychological challenges we are facing, the economic turnarounds that actually the society is facing. Kenya is a point of hopelessness, and everybody becomes a teacher. Everybody is easy running around to sell the slightest idea to control the society. And there's a problem we really need to start addressing today.
All right, and as promised, and there's several issues he's raised, Seku, that we'll ask you to respond to, and he said this does not meet the threshold of genocide and some of these other charges that have been at least vocalized at this point. But let's now join Hussein Khalid, or let's have him join us. And he's coming to us from Malindi in Kilifi County. Khalid, I'm curious, what is your mental state? You've been on ground, you know, for the better part of this exercise so far. You've seen these bodies being moved from the shallow grave sites into some of the. I saw there was a mobile morgue that was set up there as well. What sort of impact has it had on you?
Thank you, Olive, and for this opportunity to share with you our experience on the ground. As you've said, we have been on the ground from the beginning. We, as Haki Africa, are the ones who alerted the authorities to what is happening when these complaints were filed at our Malindi Center's office. And, you know, the scenes at the exhumation center are traumatizing, to say the least. Everyone who is here, from the exhumers themselves, you know, they had to get the local youth to support them, so they've been hired to work with the DCI to help them in, you know, digging up and exhuming the bodies. So from the exhumers to the police officers who are here guarding the process, from time to time they are required to assist, to the journalists who are actually covering this, because from time to time what you don't know is that the DCI used to allow the journalists to go view what is happening. Definitely they cannot film what is there, but the DCI wanted them to experience, to know exactly what is on the ground. So whatever they will show, they will have that background, you know, so that they can better explain to, Kenyans what is happening. So everyone here, requires urgent psychosocial counseling. The situation is dire. We are also meeting up with the rescued individuals. We are also meeting up with families of, searching for their loved ones, and the stories they tell are horrid. People are crying left, right, and center. So it is a very saddening situation, and we need to definitely be brief after this, because it's not something that you want to wake up to every other day of your life.
All right, I'm curious what you make of the headline that was on the Daily Nation yesterday, and I've asked the same question of Brigadier, and that is, you slept on the job. MPs tell the Director of Criminal Investigations, the Director General of National Intelligence Service, and Inspector General of Police. I wonder, are you of the same mind?
I agree with you that the security agencies particularly did sleep on the job. I'm sure by now, Olive, you've heard of very many testimonies of individuals who said, we warned the officers, we warned those in authority, we told them this is happening. As Haki Africa, we have countless numbers of OBs, from family members who are searching for their kins, who are informed that their kin are actually within this, church following, but little action was taken. It was only after, we pushed them, and we managed to go to rescue this child in the first instance, and then we, together with the officer, went to court to get the order to exhume. And even after we got the order to exhume, it was a delay of almost 2 to 3 weeks, because they insisted they needed a pathologist to come down before the exhumation could start. So yes, I agree totally that the security agencies did sleep on the job, but I also want to say it's not the security agencies only. The entire society slept on the job. For instance, if you look at, the communities that were there, in as much as they tried to, warn the authorities, I believe, the village elders, it has been discussed here in the program, community policing, Nyumba Kumi, they could have done more. They could have done better. Even, human rights groups, civil society, we as Haki Africa also, feel bad that this has happened in just a neighboring county to our headquarters. We have an office here. Yes, we did what we could. We alerted the world to what was happening here, but we feel we could have done this better. The media, yesterday I was in the same program with Ezekiel Mutua, where he said that, this guy had a television station, and he was airing some of these things. Yes, they alerted the authorities to it, but I feel they could have done even better, raise the alarm with the other authorities and stuff like that. So I believe the entire society is to blame, but at the end of the day, the buck stops at the security agencies, who are responsible for ensuring that every Kenyan is safe, and that did not happen. We failed the hundreds of Kenyans who ended up dying in this matter.
All right. And Sekou, I'll ask you to come in at this point, but first I will say the incident that has been made reference to by Hussein Khaled there in Malindi was reported on by the Daily Nation, and this is it: mother from hell, woman starved, suffocated to death, own children to, quote, please God. And now, you can find the article. It was penned by Alex Kalama, and we'll get more into this. But what stood out for me, as I'm sure it has for many people, is the children, and the children being subjected to starvation. In this case, we are told that the children, there were 3 children, one survived, and told investigators how the other 2 children were starved and then suffocated by their mother. And let me just find a quote here. Speaking to journalists during the operation to arrest the pastor, and this is the grandparent to the children. He said the main suspect had been claiming that there are disasters that may be witnessed in the near future, and therefore it is good for the children to die so that they can inherit the kingdom of heaven. If I scroll back up, I see that the 3 are suspected, and the 3 being, actually, let me just find that report for you. The mother is a worshipper in Pastor Mackenzie's church, and according to investigating officer Joseph Yator, drawn from the DCI in Malindi, police managed to rescue a third child. As I mentioned, the rescued child narrated the sufferings his two siblings underwent after being starved for some time before their mother suffocated them to death. So, in this case, where the children are concerned, Seku, there is a case to answer here for Paul Mackenzie, should he be found to have indoctrinated, because indoctrinate is a word we have been using a lot in the course of this last week, to have indoctrinated these parents?
I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure based on that. We will still need a lot more evidence. There may be a little more clarity with regard to the mother, because she suffocated the children, if that's the truth. Whether Paul Mackenzie was there and actually instigated whatever went into that, I am not so sure. That will be the evidence. I think we need to remember, especially with regard to children, the responsibility for children's spiritual, physical, and social well-being is primarily with the parents. So that breach, if any, is going to be on the part of the parent. On the part of the parent, I can say the culpability is as clear as maybe. On the part of the pastor, you would have a lot of work to do, because then you see you have to attach that decision by the mother specifically on the pastors. The law talks about counseling and persuading and whatever. So you must say that it's a pastor who actually told her, do this, and that she would not otherwise have done it, but for his insistence or exercising of some pressure of some kind on him. That will not be easy. I can say it for now, unless a lot more evidence is found there.
Okay, but if I look at that statement that the judiciary released, and I have a clearer copy now in my possession, in 2017, I'm seeing the accused was charged with 4 counts, the first of which was radicalization. Contrary to Section 12D of the Prevention and Terrorism Act, the particulars were that on 29th of September 2017 at the Good News International Ministries in Malindi, he promoted an extreme belief system for the purposes of facilitating ideology-based to advance religious and social change. Anything attached to terrorism, I would assume, would have attached a heavy sentence.
Yes, it would be. But actually, if you read, I wish you could do that and produce Section 12D completely. It's not, radicalization is not simply about the promotion. That offense is not simply about the promotion of an extreme belief system. It is the promotion of an extreme belief system to lead the person to whom it is being promoted, okay, to seek social or political change through some violent means. Okay? The offense requires that, therefore, this person has conducted some violence in pursuit of that in order for the radicalization charge to stick. It may actually be why he was acquitted there. Because the offense as drafted there is not complete. The constituents of this offense is not just that I'm promoting an extreme belief system, but it must be one that aims at deriving change, okay, through some violent means on the part of the person to whom I'm exercising that. So there's an issue there.
Okay, I've pulled it up, the Prevention of Terrorism Act, and it was section
12D.
12. Oh, sorry.
D.
12D.
Yes.
Let's find it. Okay, here we go. It states a person. Okay, so let's start with action. Is it 12D? Or have I pulled up the wrong thing?
Which one have you pulled out? Which is that?
Let us see. This is prevention of terrorism. Oh, no, this is a subsidiary legislation. I will find
2012.
Okay, I will find it. But if an imam in a mosque, just if I'm to, replace, switch out the actors. If an imam in a mosque's teaching leads to a suicide bomb attack, for instance, wouldn't he be held liable or culpable? Why does the same not apply in this instance?
Precisely. Yeah, and that's why I'm saying we are switching two things that are important. Let's say that if as a result of that, whatever, and by the way, this doesn't even have to be religious. It can even be a chama where we sit and somebody radicalizes us by promoting an extreme belief system with a view to attaining social change through violent means.
Oh, okay.
Through violent means.
I hear you. I hear you. I get what you mean now.
Yes, that's the issue. So what we are going to be arguing in court is, did this gentleman tell people to act violently against their children? And I'm going to be wondering whether that is something that can be attributed to him, especially if, and it is the reason why I still exercise, I say let's exercise caution, depending on what these people died of. Because if it's starvation, then we're going to start asking ourselves whether that is violence.
What do you make of that, Brigadier?
Well, the law has its side in terms of this. I'll not go into the law and into the details, but again, we must respect society, and we must respect lives, indeed. And the fact that if anybody is to interfere with life or be able to have such acts happen, I don't believe that you can be let go. The fact that you're a member of the church, you have been following this church for a long time, and then the preaching is along those lines, and then you come and do that act. Indeed, I believe strongly that you have a case to answer. The same thing with we saw with the imams in different mosques, that the imams were actually followed. And the same will happen in this case. There's no difference in terms of the teachings. Yeah, but you see, we have no problem with the element of a straight and fair teaching. But where it touches on lives, both of the person and others, it becomes actually an incident of concern. Therefore, in this case, we saw what happened. We saw even very powerful people going down there, some even taking money. I should mention this also, and I'll angle to this. The act of commercialization of religion, that these churches are so rich, again touching on society, that they're able to compromise even some element of society and some element of security institutions. And this was said again in 2018, that yes, it happened, and they're able to buy their way out. Again, the rotten society across the system, from the village elders all the way up. Now, this will come later. At some point, I hope we'll discuss about the regulation of religious institutions. Thank you.
And we will come to that. Because I'm curious, the Constitution, it's Article what, 30? Segu, help me here. Freedom of worship.
Belief and,
yes, and conscience. Okay, we'll find it, 30 something. Because I pulled it up, I think, the whole of this week, apart from yesterday. I mean, and my question to you on that, and we'll come back to that, is if I choose to fast, and if I choose to go on a hunger strike, what control then does the state have over my actions? And can somebody else be, we'll get into that, but I have found section 12D in the Prevention of Terrorism Act of 2012. It states, I don't know whether I should zoom in further. Is it clear now? Let's see. A person who adopts or promotes an extreme belief system for the purpose of facilitating ideologically based violence to advance political, religious, or social change commits an offense and is liable on conviction to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 30 years. I'll take that again. A person who adopts or promotes an extreme belief system for the purpose of facilitating ideologically based violence, which is, I think, the point that Seku has been trying to make. But Dr. Likaka, let me come to you now on the question of, have politicians contributed to the handling of the church and religious leaders with questionable, who've made questionable statements, who have, questionable behaviors? Has politics contributed to their handling with kid gloves?
Thank you so much. One of the things we need to be alive to is the fact that you cannot separate politicians from religion, and particularly the church. And I'll take you back to 2007, 2008, when the church or the religious groups were actually divided. And we are all aware of the challenges we faced in 2007, 2008. We've also seen that the current government came into office on the platform of actually the church. So that is where you find a little bit of how we are going to handle this matter, because already you've seen how politicians are coming out, delinking themselves, yet they have actually been part and parcel of some of these religious movements. A few years ago, the former president, Uhuru Kenyatta, actually stopped the former AG, Githu Muigai, from bringing a bill that was supposed to actually regulate the church, and particularly how the churches have actually been registering themselves as societies and the conduct of their business across the country. This is something that you find becomes very difficult to handle, and that's why you find every other institution is actually releasing a statement exonerating itself here and there. But the truth of the matter is we need to start looking at it critically going forward, that indeed we need to separate some of these institutions and see to what extent are the politicians misleading us. And I said at the beginning that actually what is happening in the country and even the Shakahola massacre is just a reflection of how rotten our society is, how values have gone down, how we are now use Christianity or religion today as a lifestyle, as opposed to really having serious biblical teachings that can help to change the society. On the flip side of it, we also need to appreciate that politicians are part and parcel of the criminal justice system, are the ones who are coming out to obstruct justice. In scenarios where some of these people have been arrested, we've seen politicians coming out and ensuring that actually these people are actually released. The criminal justice, particularly the police, they lack resources, they lack the mechanism. Even you look at it in the scenario of Paul Mackenzie, they have taken this matter to court severally, but then whenever they do it, they don't meet the threshold. So they go back frustrated. So somehow they have left these things to happen the way they're happening. And the reality of the matter today will be, let us not point fingers. Let us take a critical examination of what the institutions are and think about the best way forward, which will take time, so that we actually come up with a review and reconstruct the way forward for this country based on this, what I call religious radicalization by the Christians, not even the Muslims per se.
All right. And before we take a break, let's hear from Hussein Khalid, the Executive Director of Haki Africa. He's also an advocate himself, a lawyer, as well as human rights activist. Hussein, having witnessed what you've witnessed, what recommendations would Haki Africa make moving forward so we do not once again find ourselves in a similar position?
Thanks, Olive. Allow me also to delve into the discussion of violence, and my thinking is that the prosecution will not have a difficult time to prove violence, and I agree that you know, this is the definition and we need to work within the definition. Any act that leads to harm, you know, there is physical violence, there's also psychological violence, you know. Here there's an ideological belief, particularly when it's perpetrated by an individual, that leads to, you know, tens and hundreds who are dead right now as we speak. I think that is something that is very clear. If you laugh yourself to death, for example, you can't say that that's okay because, you know, you died while in hysteria laughing to death, you know, or someone made you or caused you to do that. For me, there's a reason why suicide is a criminal offense, because we realize that, you know, even yourself, you as an individual, you have no right by any means to take your own life away. Life is sacred. It's protected. It's a right, even that, you know, you as a person cannot take your own. So I think that the prosecution won't have a difficult time to prove that this was violent. Usually in law there is, you know, the actus reus and the mens rea. Was there an intention? Yes. Was the action there also? Yes. And I think that will be very clear. In terms of recommendations, I think we have been on the ground. The first thing we need to do, police must take every complaint seriously, you know, because the problem is that, you know, particularly in places like this, institutions of worship are competing every other day. They file reports every other day. They accuse each other falsely every other day. So when we went this, you know, first time when we said there's a child and we fear that child will be killed, our officer went to the police station to report this. it was, you know, the same. Are you sure? Because we went with the 2 former adherents of, you know, Pastor Mackenzie's church, New Life International. And they were like, oh, these are the usual stuff. These guys are always pointing fingers at each other and all that. And we had to go on our own. Our officer in Malindi, together with, you know, the complainants, had to go there and face these individuals, to the father, you know, and forcefully somehow managed to get the child out, the 5-year-old boy. You know, and it is now from that boy where the story was, you know, shared out. We managed to go to the DCI, got the court order to exhume the other 2 siblings, the ones that you are referring to. So number one, we know that police are inundated with so many cases every other day, but every case I think should be treated, you know, especially, and find out what exactly is happening here. Number two, I personally believe that we need to regulate religious institutions. And it's easy right now to condemn, you know, the entire church, and we need to be very careful. As Muslims, we've been through this. When one mosque or one preacher, you know, radicalized people, and then the mosque was targeted as a mosque, as an institution, instead of that individual or that one mosque, and we know what has happened. Everywhere you go, there is, you know, Islamophobia and everything. So we also need to be very careful here when it comes to the church. We don't want the experience that mosques and Muslims have gone through to be repeated. We must learn from that. You cannot criminalize an individual because he or she is a Christian, or you target the entire institution because of you know, one church. So that we need to be very careful. So we must regulate. We must regulate. You can't just wake up one morning and lead hundreds of people on a suicide path. If matatus today, you can't buy a matatu and just throw it in the streets. You have to belong to a certain circle that can regulate you, that can monitor you, that can make sure you abide by the rules. The same must happen for religious institutions. Whether it's a church, it's a mosque, it's a temple, it's a synagogue, you must belong to a certain order where if any mistake goes, is noted, then they can come in to regulate you. The third thing that I think we need to do better is to extend this community policing and nyumba kumi beyond the towns and cities. Because right now, you know, this place is almost 100 kilometers from Malindi, where we are here. You actually drive and you see households. You drive until there are no more households. It's just bush and thicket. And then from the main road, you have to go inwards, cut across, you know, trees and all that before you even get to that burial center. So it's really, 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 you know, in remote areas. So we must find ways. And this is just one area. We don't know what is happening in many of these remote areas. So hopefully this opens up the doors for people to now begin asking themselves what is happening in the interior. Because I think as a country, as a nation, we have over-concentrated in the urban areas, the cities and the towns that we know of, and we have no idea of what is happening inside. The NIS, the ATPU, the DCI must go, you know, in details to understand what has happened here. We must learn from it, and it must never happen again in our country.
All right, so we take that break, I promise. But when we come back, Seku, I take you back to Section 12D of the Kenya Terrorism Act of 2012. And I'll ask you to approach it from this point of view. An acolyte. Who is an acolyte? My dictionary here tells me a person assisting a priest in a religious service or procession, an assistant or follower. And if we look at the update that was provided by the judiciary, they tell us that there are several other people who were arrested in connection with this. One of those gentlemen was named by the Labor and Social Security Cabinet Secretary the other day, that is Florence Bore, and she said there's a gentleman called Smart that the children she spoke to, who survived the events of Shakahola, said there's a gentleman called Smart, and here I see that the state moved the court on the 24th of this month, seeking orders to hold the accused persons, including this Smart Mwakalama Haji Kombo and Mtengua Mkai. And there are allegations that these gentlemen may have been involved in the suffocation in blunt force trauma, which has not yet been established. But if it is established that these acolytes of Paul Mackenzie did facilitate the deaths of some of these people, does it then meet the requirements of Section 12D in terms of, let me pull it up. Oh, I closed it, I'll find it again. Causing violence?
Then there'll be no point in even charging them under 12D. Just charge them with murder straight. 12D is radicalization.
No, but now in terms of Paul Mackenzie.
In terms of
yes,
Paul
if he
Mackenzie,
radicalized these gentlemen, and then these gentlemen went on to commit crimes.
You see, the point
based
is
on his teachings.
There's going to be a connection between what he says and what they go ahead and they do. That connection must be there. You can't just say, it's like...
And how do you prove that connection?
Pardon?
How do you prove that connection?
That it was unnecessary, it was an unnecessary, okay, and direct inference or consequence of what he told them.
So now, let's say, for example, we've seen some cases where it's been alleged where a spouse hires somebody to kill their spouse. Yes. So that is we consider that conspiracy to murder.
Yes, that's clear.
Why does that not apply in this instance?
That's no, because
unless he gave an order.
Yes, specifically with specific regard, or that it was a natural consequence of his teaching or his radicalization for it to come there. This thing is not straight and cut. Bearing in mind the level of proof you will have beyond reasonable doubt in a criminal offense, I do not think it's that straightforward.
All right, so we take a break. We'll come back with Seku. We'll come back with Seku, even on the issue of suicide, because we haven't been calling it suicide. Now is when I'm hearing the suicide. We've been hearing fasting, starvation, so now the element of suicide has been introduced. So we come back with that on the other side of this break.
All transactions with DTB are secure. Achieving more for you is the least we can do. Because at Diamond Trust Bank, you don't just bank with us, you bank on us.
Looking for learning material that is tailored to your needs? Look no further than the new High Schooler magazine. As the ultimate guide for junior, secondary and high school students, the new High Schooler magazine is packed with premium content on a wide range of topics including careers, literature, finance and much more. With this magazine, you'll have access to valuable information that can help you make informed decisions about your future. So why wait? Subscribe to the new High Schooler today and start
crossing counties and bridges, and yes, famous Nithi Bridge points to our destination as we hit the road.
We are welcoming everyone to come to Tharaka Nithi because Tharaka Nithi has so much to offer.
Building on infrastructure, healthcare and tourism.
Very good scenery. Ikwa Falls, Naka Falls, Kivuka Falls. The only elephant maternity is found in Tharaka Nithi.
Tena kulima, tunalima sana, tuko na masamba huku.
Weka miadi nasi kati ya Ijumaa na Jumapili hii katika kaunti nambari 13.
Kumagalibisa Tharaka Nithi sana. Mego Maria ganile Magidhrania News.
Come to Tharaka Nithi, have fun, enjoy yourself.
Ni jarida la Stronghold.
The meat industry is a vital part of Kenya's economy, and it's time to invest in its future. That's why we are proud to announce the Kenya Meat Expo coming to the Kenyatta International Convention Center from May 3rd to 5th, 2023. We are inviting all meat stakeholders to come and exhibit their products and equipment, demonstrate innovation, sell and interact with consumers and network. For details on how you can be part of this exciting event, please contact 0 0721 403 915 or email agoko@ke.nationmedia.com. And best of all, the event is free for the public to attend. Join us at the Kenya Meat Expo and be part of the future of the meat industry.
We partner with communities across all 47 counties by advancing education, by enhancing healthcare, by supporting economic opportunities. Because when we unite, there's nothing we can't do.
My baby is famous for her happy dancing moves because she's always happy. What's the reason for this happiness? Molfix dryness. It's what all mothers dream of. Come on, mothers, try Molfix baby diapers and be part of our happiness movement.
Own your dream home for as low as 1.98 million Kenya shillings in Vipingo Kilifi. SMS Vipingo to 22365 or call us today on 0740 400 215. Terms and conditions apply.
All right, welcome back to AM Live, and we have in studio and on location two people. We have in studio Sekwa Wino, Head of Legal and Training, Nation Media Group. We have retired Brigadier General Ahmed Mohammed, Defense and Security Advisor, Horn Institute. We also have coming to us from Mombasa, Dr. Luchetu Likaka, sociologist and criminologist, and Hussein Khalid, who is in the thick of things, quite literally. He's Executive Director, Haki Africa, coming to us from Malindi in Kilifi County. But before we took the break, Seku, my question to you was this. If a person chooses to fast and they fast to the point of death, where does the state come in there?
I don't see, with great respect. I mean, we've had instances of prisoners of conscience in jail saying we're going to starve ourselves to death. You can't. Unless you probably would have to go, if this person, if there's a need, maybe an intervention of a court intervention so that you force feed them. But a person who goes and sits in his own house and decides to fast and makes a mistake there and passes away, you cannot do anything to him. I don't see that necessarily the law can come into it. We don't want that to happen. We probably might want to charge them with attempted suicide, which under our law, incidentally, is a misdemeanor. It's not even a felony. So even the law begins to see that it's not a serious crime, because I think it comes from the hearing that sometimes the rational human being would not want to commit suicide. So probably some people attempt suicide out of mental illness or some other reason. So that's why we need to be careful about even this particular instance. We need to ask ourselves, can the law legislate for every instance of irrationality even? I want to say that with respect. It's not always possible.
But if I look at this statement that was released by the judiciary, one of the things he was accused of was in 2019 or 2017, let me check. Let me refer here. The one about running an unlicensed education
center.
18.
It was 20?
I believe 18.
2018. Let me see, let me scroll. Yes. So if offering basic education in an unregistered institution, and what was he teaching these children? Because the statement continues to talk about there were 4 minors who are there.
Yes.
Is that not radicalization? And was he not, can it not be proven then? Should it be proven? You know, we are not in a court of law. We have to allow the law to take its course. But if he was deliberately targeting young minds, which are as And until the age of 21, we're told by scientists, are not yet fully formed, right? So if he was deliberately targeting these young minds, then is he not a predator? Is it not radicalization? Is it not a criminal offense?
But if you look at that, the offense was that he was offering basic education in an unregistered institution. So his problem was not registering the institution.
But he's also accused of failing to provide right to education of a child, failing to take his or her child to. So what was he teaching?
Those were his children.
Yes, offered basic education in an unregistered institution.
That was the problem. So that, because then, that is how the schools are regulated and education is regulated. So that when he goes to register it, they check, is he qualified to offer it? What kind of education will he be offering? The curriculum, is it in tandem with what we offer other children in basic education? So if he qualifies, he'll be given. If he doesn't, then he's not registered. So I think, and that is why he was charged with that offense. You're not supposed to do it outside a properly registered school.
Wait, I'm mixing things. I found the one I'm looking for. This is Malindi Miscellaneous Criminal Application of application number 176 of 2017. The state made an application to hold Pastor Mackenzie and 20 others for 30 days on grounds that they were to carry out investigations for radicalization of children after they were found with 73 children in a church that was believed to have been a radicalization process. The court ordered age assessments to be done for 4 of the suspects who are found to be minors, and an order for care and protection was issued. The court allowed the other suspects to be held, it goes on and on. In this instance, and even outside of children, if this man was, because we talked about mental illness, I think was Dr. Likaka who talked about mental illness. If this man was deliberately targeting children and persons who are perhaps vulnerable to said radicalization, does that qualify?
It still has to meet 12D for it to be radicalization. Do they want to promote that extreme belief for purposes of an ideological purpose, for violence? Because that's the offense. You know, let's remember, and that's part of the problem here, that there's the common language we use. You and I understand radicalization in a different way from how the law defines it. But in order for it to qualify for radicalization under that act, then it must meet the constituents there, which means there must be a dimension of violence, as clearly stated in that. We can argue, I doubt myself, that you'd be able to convince a court that there's such a thing as psychological violence. I doubt, in the context of that act. I doubt it.
All right. Brigadier, the law must move with the times. This is now a threat. Circumstances such as this, we've never had, not in my experience, I've never witnessed something similar to, in my few or many years in this country. I've never encountered something of such magnitude in terms of said followers of a religious, we are calling it a cult, committing or having, you know, we're calling it mass killings, massacre, and you know, a lot of, we've labeled it a lot of things. But I've never witnessed something similar to this. Should the law move with the times? I know one of the things that has been proposed even by Dr. Likaka is regulation of churches. Previously, it has been a live wire issue.
Very good, Olive. Now, the point also raised by Likaka was the issue of, or it was, I believe other friend, that this should never happen again. It should never happen again. But the problem is we don't learn. We don't learn from these things. We are, as I said earlier on, we are reactive. We have seen things happening, then we forget. Why does that happen? Why? Again, the rot in society. The rot in society. Number one is the issue of the independence of institutions. They are very weak. And they all live under fear, and you don't know why. You're looking up always, under fear. You don't do what you're supposed to do. And I want to say this very clearly for our security institutions, the police and all that, yeah, and the chiefs and all that. The element of professionalism. Do what you have been told to do without fear. Without fear. And then remember, you are there to serve. You are there to serve. Not to condemn, not to harass, not to push. Although our government has a hand in terms of providing resources, but unfortunately, the mind itself is not clear. The mind is not ready to serve. So when I come to say, I have a case, I even fear to go and report that case. because I know the outcome will not satisfy my expectations. We need a total, more like maybe change of attitude, mindset change of how we do things, and be professional in what you do. Serve. Had we done our things right? Have we done our things right? It will not happen. And that goes across the entire system. There's blame game going on now. The blame going between school institutions, the judiciary, and all that. And that flows across the system. That all those independent institutions don't do exactly what is required of them. That the judiciary will let something, I know how complex it is to complete a case, as we are hearing now. There are issues that are coming, all that. But where we have something like this one, where there's loss of children particularly, and we go into the law and start finding other ways, I don't think that's the way to go. I know you have a right. You are right in terms of the case you have put forward, but in such a case, I'm sorry, we must set the example that this never happens again. And I'm very clearly, let's go out there. This is just the tip of the iceberg. We must regulate religious institutions. There's fear in them. The fact that you're confined in that room, there's that element of freedom. That freedom expires when you interfere with other people's freedom. When you kill children, other people's children, that freedom disappears. And that should not be allowed. Therefore, number one, professionalization of our institutions, security institutions. Do what is right. Number two, serve the people. Number three, you have no option. This area of religious institutions has been left on its own, has been left to what they want to do. Yes, most of them do well. But where there is others taking advantage, and much more worse, commercialization of that religion. They're bring money and all that. And then using that, again, against systems. We've been told that. We've been told that money has been used against systems, again, going back to the rot in society. Unfortunately, it came up right now. It took a long time to get here. You have got here now. Being the Kenyans we are, I can assure you, after going through all this, made all the noise, give it a year. You'll forget about it and go back to where you came from. And I want to relate this also to what is going on in North Rift. It's quiet now. We think it's normal. No. It's a time now to put in proper policies. The time to put in those police stations and posts and all that. The time to address those key elements who are involved in this in peacetime, so that it never happens again. But I'm sorry, we don't learn.
All right. Dr. Likaka, I'll put you in the hot seat now with this question. And this was the title of our poster. Shakahola Crimes Against Humanity, overworking to save face or a stitch in time?
Thank you. One of the things that has come out very clearly is that the government has actually been caught with its pants down, and they're struggling actually to cover their face. The truth be said, the government has failed. If you look at the criminal justice and look at the Nyumba Kumi, look at the village elders, look at the county government, in first instance, they were all missing in action. There were only human rights and journalists on the ground. And the worst thing is that when you find the CS going to the ground, the most immediate thing is actually closes the whole place, now declares a crime scene, and therefore no media and no human rights. Yet they are the very people who brought this matter to the fore. What is the government? Why is the government doing that? It's because the government will want to actually cover up so that it can hold, one, take care of our emotions and the reactive nature of Kenyans and the whole wars on Twitter and Facebook, wherever. That could be managed very well. Number two, they actually be doing that because they want to take time to investigate and provide a credible evidence to the court of law. If that will be, then so be it. But then the big question will be, how have these elements of radicalization or cultic movement come into the fore, yet consistently Kenyans have been keeping quiet while they are merging different churches? In 1996 or so, we had less than 1,000 registered. Today, there are over 4,000. And if you look at statistics, they also indicate that around 16% of Kenyans are the ones who go to church. Yet we are claiming Kenyan society is around 85% Christians and maybe 11 or so % Muslims. These are questions that probably we need to look back and examine ourselves as a society, because the main problem we are facing today is that these cultic movements, this Christian kind of camouflaged in a way that they are teaching biblical teachings, but they are not, and misleading the society. There are a few of these charismatic leaders, we are seeing them emerging, teachings that are always, you're told, take this water, take this white scarf, take whatever form, so that you can actually go to heaven. And this is something that is misleading. We need to be candid enough. Nobody should come up and say, I cannot question issues of religiosity because this matters between me and God. Yet the same person is actually teaching what you think is just basic human, against basic human rights. They are violating even the same freedom of worship where there should be parameters. And therefore we should be candid enough to accept that we must regularize religious institutions because they must play their role just like the economic institution or the social institution for purposes of ensuring that Kenya goes forward as a developing country that can achieve its objectives. On the other side, people within the criminal justice, particularly judiciary, must also apply the law to the latter. The challenge is the superfluous application of the law where it comes to matters or dealing with people who are influential in society. And the question will be, is the law meant for the poor? How come actually many of these people who have money or well-to-do, when they are taken to court, they actually come back home easily? And look at this man, Paul Mackenzie, has been running to court every now and then because of the issues that he has been doing. He's taken to court every now and then. What is the frustration within the police sector? What about the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions? Look at the statement he released. These are issues that will bring in a lot of questions, and we need to start asking ourselves, and it will also be a good point for us to deconstruct our values as a society going forward and looking back, come up with proper mechanisms to regulate ourselves, and we grow as a society.
All right. Now, as we wind up, Hussein Khalid, who's joining us, for those just joining us, from Malindi in Kilifi. The numbers we are looking at here are bigger than Westgate. They're approaching Garissa University attack levels. You talked about a commission of inquiry. How seriously do you expect the authorities to take this? You talked about a commission of inquiry.
Yeah, we are very concerned, particularly with what my brother Lekaka has referred to. They're now shutting down the area. They have refused to allow media to go in. I think initially it was very clear, it was very open for everyone to see. We fear that they may be trying to not give all the facts as they are on the ground, which is very unfortunate. We still hope that they will accept to be open, to allow for transparency, because this is a learning process also for Kenya. The more people are aware of what happened here, the better they will be equipped to stop this thing from happening in their midst. So we are hoping that they will still open up. But the numbers, as you've said, so far, as by end of yesterday, 109, 101 exhumed, and 8 we found before they were buried. We still don't know what the numbers could end up like. Information we have is that there are still mass graves in there. Even the area that we are in, the cemetery, the general area that all the efforts have been on, some of those who have been saved claim that there are other areas within the expansive 800-acre that may be having similar numbers of graves. So we don't know at this point. And it's only fair that the government allows Kenyans to fully understand, even for those who died, it's important for their stories to be told and for them to get justice. We feel that, as human rights practitioners, we should have done better as a country. And I still agree with everyone what they're saying, that the security agencies could have done better. In a civilized society, we would have seen many resignations by now. But of course, this is Kenya, and, the way everyone says, I will not resign. But at the end of the day, I agree that we should stop finger pointing, find out what went wrong. Let's learn from it, and then make sure this doesn't happen again. I get saddened, and I agree with my brother Lihaha that 1 year from now there's a possibility that everyone will have forgotten this, and we will still see other religious institutions coming up with radical ideologies and ideas and all that, and this is saddening to imagine that this could repeat itself. But more importantly for me, and I want to send this message to the state, is the search and rescue. As we speak, Olive, we believe from the people we have talked to from the communities that there are still many inside this forest. They who may be continuing with their fasting, who may be dying, who they be buried as we speak. And unfortunately, we said this to the CS, we said this to the authorities here, whether it's low-flying helicopters to go out searching for these individuals so that we can save them, we've not seen those. We've seen Red Cross, for example, yesterday they came with drones. We had journalists who had drones, but even for them to be able to, and they were free, they're ready to offer these services, but then they're told, oh no, you can't do that, we have to get authority from Nairobi, while there's a possibility we are losing lives. So I would really insist on, particularly the media and, NTV and everyone, let us put pressure on the government to, concentrate on the search and rescue. These people have gone further inwards into the forest. Where we are presently is just 2 or 3 kilometers from the main road. When people came out, we know for sure, that they have moved inwards, and we don't know to what extent. We are told that there's a possibility when you are fasting and maybe you are near death, you could change your mind. So they usually have people to guide you so that you don't change your mind, so that you go through this. Let's remember that, what they were told, putting a rope around your neck, or you're not getting a gun and shooting yourself. They were told that this is worship, and you're dying in an act of worship. So they believed that, what they were doing is so sacred, that the world is coming to an end, and we must, pass through this bridge and get to heaven before it's too late. And for them, whatever is happening presently is a prophecy that has come true. Because they said they were told that people will come here and they will come with police officers and they will stop you from ascending to heaven. The people we've saved, they've been crying. They're denying any help. They don't want first aid administered on them, because for them, this is a prophecy that they were told people will come to stop you. So they are refusing. I remember one lady, we tried, with a spoon to just put some water on her lips, and she completely refused. Another man we went to see, and he's like, look, I'm in my senses, and this is what Seko was saying. I'm an adult of sound mind. I know what I'm doing. I request you to leave me alone. Just leave. I'm in this place voluntarily. No one has forced me to do anything. Whatever I'm doing out of my own free will. So for them, we are, quote unquote, sons of Satan who have come in to stop them from ascending to heaven. And they truly believe this. They really feel that, this is their path. And you are told when someone died, they called it harusi. And the pastor would be called. And when they were burying, they bury communally. They tell people, now this one has gone to the kingdom of heaven. And, so that those that were there were feeling like, I wish that was me. He's already gone. He's already there. So we also have to understand how the indoctrination happened. How these people felt that, that even now when we are coming for us, we are saying we are saving them. For them, we are actually stopping them from ascending to heaven. So it's the scenes that are down here, you hear the people who've been rescued, you hear the communities, you are really like, puzzled. How did this happen? How did this individual manage to convince so many people, that what is happening is right? For us who are out here, this is unacceptable. It is something you can't even fathom, you know, that this could happen at this point in time, but it has happened. So I think there are many issues, many questions that need to be answered. We need to find out how we got to this, this place. But, there are many issues that we need to address as a country so that, this never happens again.
All right, Senate has called for a commission of inquiry. Senators form 11-member panel to probe Shakahola cult deaths. Senators have asked the state to form a commission of inquiry to unearth the mysterious deaths linked to a religious cult in Shakahola. The move comes even as the minority whip in the Senate, Buni Halwale, pushed for the formation of an ad hoc committee to investigate the deaths. But finally, Seku, as concisely as you are able, two things. We talked about, we've touched on regulation of churches on a very surface level, but the Constitution in Article 32, as Rosalino Bala has informed me, speaks of the freedom of conscience, religion, belief, and opinion. You know, you've urged caution where Paul Mackenzie is concerned and all the crimes that are being piled on his shoulders. Are you also urging caution where this is concerned?
Yes, I will. I will. Because let's not use the worst possible example to generate regulation, particularly in light of, let's remember that right under Article 32 is a right of conscience, belief, religion, and opinion. Okay. So what is it about religious institutions we want to regulate? Do we want to regulate doctrine? Because that's the point at which we all differ. You know, what I call my church is what somebody else calls a cult. So we have to be careful there. What do we want to regulate? Okay. Are we going to regulate governance questions? Then we can say this. But you cannot tell, we are going to get into very difficult situations. Who is even going to be this regulator? Because I can see very easily everybody objecting to an agnostic or an atheist regulating religion. Isn't it? So who is this going to be the regulator of religions, and how are you going to do it? So I would suggest, let's forget about regulating matter of doctrine. Let's be clear about what we want to regulate. Do we want to regulate governance, how they are run, how this happens? Maybe it will be a tough call. And that's why I am saying we also have to realize that there's limits to even what we can achieve through law. Okay? A few years ago, we painted school buses yellow following an accident. Last week, we've now decided we want to do other things. This Monday morning quarterbacking is not the way to solve our problems. As everybody has said here, General has put it very clearly, my colleagues have put it, our problem is not law as such. We also have a problem which requires us as a society to think, what is it that makes me as an adult Kenyan to starve my child to death and starve to death? There's a problem of education there. What is our kind of education and our ability to discuss things and to rationalize certain things? Law will not resolve that for us.
Okay. So yes. Did Mackenzie know what he was talking about when he said, have you seen a fence? Have you seen me lock anybody in any room?
Those are legal questions that will probably arise, because now as it's even emerging, that property doesn't even belong to him.
Yes. All right. So I have to bring the conversation to a close, gentlemen. But I want to thank my panelists this morning. Seku Owino, Head of Legal and Training Nation Media Group, retired Brigadier General Ahmed Mohammed, Defense and Security Advisor, Horn Institute. We've also heard from Dr. Luchetu Likaka, sociologist and criminologist from Mombasa. And still at the coast, we've heard from Hussein Khalid, Executive Director, Haki Africa, who is very literally in the thick of things in Kilifi. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you for taking the time to join us this morning. My name is Olive Burrows. I make way for Sherehe, Sheria, Radio meets TV. I hope it lightens the mood.